from Florida's capital, this is Power Play.
$5 billion budget hit darkens the skies in the Sunshine State, and one senator warns people will die from the cuts. Pay cuts for the governor, legislators, and cabinet officers. Good gesture or sappy symbolism? Governor Crist fights for health care for the uninsured, and Allstate is called bad hands people under threats from the state of Florida. All that this week on Power Play with our guests, Bill Cotterell, political editor of the Tallahassee Democrat, and Steve Bosquet, Capitol Bureau Chief of the St. Pete Times. Draconian budget cuts, it seems everybody getting hurt. How bad is it?
Pretty serious. Nursing homes, medically needy, foster kids, pediatric AIDS sufferers, runs the whole gamut. And it's really heavily directed this time, Ron, in health care. That's where general revenue is based. That's the sales tax money. That's the money that comes in through cash registers all over Florida.
It's going to be felt, obviously, statewide, and I think not just by the poor, although I think they're the hardest hit with the health care cuts, things like this, but people are going to be paying more for their kid to go to college. Kids will be in more crowded classrooms. Transportation projects won't be completed as planned. This is going to have very long-lasting effects, and in an election year, nobody likes to go home without any pork.
Senator Steve Geller says people will die from this level of cuts. Is that just drama, or is it true?
Well,
I find it very plausible.
How's that going to play out there?
I think that what I describe as the boomerang effect hasn't happened yet. You have the Tallahassee bubble making policy decisions, but it takes days, sometimes weeks, maybe months, before on Main Street, you know, in Castleberry and in Tamarack, people grasp the enormity of what they're doing. And this is enormous. These are historic cuts, and we've seen a lot of posturing in attempt to minimize it and say that we're living within our means and so forth. I think the real test will come when this budget lands on Charlie Crist's desk.
Is there any good public policy coming out of this budgeting process?
I don't think they can afford public policy. Right now, their only public policy is to avoid raising taxes, which is sacred to the leadership.
So lawmakers moving a measure that would cut their pay, the governor's, cabinet officers, what's that about?
Oh, cutting legislative pay is a nice gesture and essentially meaningless. As a matter of fact, if legislators had true courage, and I've written this, they're underpaid. The legislators who work hard, and they work really hard in this process. They were in session one night, Ron, recently till 10:30 at night in the House. I'm not suggesting that's a good way to do public policy, but the taxpayers get their money's worth from these legislators.
Yes, I agree. Obviously, nobody, since Claude Kirk was governor, I don't think there's been a major pay increase for legislators, but the perhaps symbolism of taking a cut for the governor and cabinet and legislators, at least since state employees rank and file won't get a pay raise, maybe it's symbolically important.
Tough as the economy and the budget are, Governor Crist fighting hard for health care for the uninsured. Where's that proposal going?
He's got a real fight on his hands with the House. The House has their own idea for helping the uninsured, and Charlie Crist did something I haven't seen him do recently. He's ramping up, his staff people too are ramping up the rhetoric against the House, saying the House proposal's not good and so forth. You know, his philosophy is generally to lay back. The legislature, it's their show. He'll weigh in when it's all over. But he's got the Senate on his side with the approach he wants to take, and he's fighting the House.
Major points for standing up on the issue?
Yes, he told the Democrat editorial board recently that there was a lot going on unseen, that he was working very hard at this, because the question was, you know, you seem awfully placid. He said there's an awful lot going on. This is a long way from over, and that he was, that was, as Steve mentioned, just before he started being more harshly critical of the House.
Allstate Insurance in the crosshairs with state regulators. The governor himself says bad hands in reference to them, forced with maybe stopping to write business as of next week. How is that being perceived?
I think the insurance industry, their credibility is really at a low ebb right now. In fact, we saw on the Senate floor Senator Al Lawson run some pro-insurance industry amendments, and he was steamrolled by Republicans. I mean, Republican senators look like Ralph Nader's out there going after the insurance industry. This is part of a continuing effort to really hold the insurance industry accountable in the state.
And
quick comment?
Senator Lawson is an insurance agent himself and knows whereof he speaks.
Okay. 1-2, Power Play of the Week. Who did it and why?
Marion Hammer on the Guns at Work bill. 2 years in a row, the Chamber of Commerce, Associated Industries prevailed. This year, the NRA prevailed.
What's been the difference?
Election year. Nobody wants mass mailings saying that you're for gun control.
Steve?
Democrats in the House, late one night, tuck an amendment into a big budget bill which basically says the subsidies that the state gives every year to professional sports franchises to pay for their stadium improvements, forget it. Not next year. And what happened was nobody would stand up and defend the sports subsidies. How are you going to defend those tax breaks when you're cutting money to poor and sick people?
Okay, Steve Bosquet, Bill Cotterill, thank you. Go to the Safety Review for the latest political news, and we'll see you next time on Power Play.